Welcome to KMET 1490 AM ABC News Radio and the Southern California Business Report with Yvette Walker, a show dedicated to highlighting successful Southern California businesses and the people behind them.
Welcome and thank you for joining the Southern California Business Report on ABC News and Talks, KMET 1490 AM, 98.1 FM, and KMET TV. I'm Yvette Walker, live blasting our signal from the center of Southern California, serving a population of over 25 million. Get us crystal clear and on demand by downloading the free live streaming app on Google Play or the Apple App Store. Again, as always, a huge shout out to the team, Mitch, Bill, and Sean. I love you. And to our special advisory committee, Bill Morris of UCI School of Business, Jose and Camila Rubio. Thank you so much. Also, don't forget to check out the Jay Kaplan Show, also on KMET on Fridays at 3, as well as the Aaron Michael Sanchez Morning Show every morning at 8 a.m., also on KMET. Today, I have the distinct pleasure to introduce Justin Brown. He's the founder of TNN, an IT managed services provider. He started the company in 2001 when he was only 21 years old. His company has received recognition by the MSPMentor 501 Global List, is a Microsoft Silver Partner, and has been on the Inc. 5000 fastest growing corporations list multiple times. His company exists to support small and medium businesses with all of their technology needs. This includes their phones, copiers, surveillance systems, cloud services, and cyber security. After dropping out of high school, Justin acquired his Microsoft Engineer certification in 3 months through self-study. Later in life, he became a Christian and got his undergraduate degree from Moody Bible Institute, where he majored in biblical studies. He's now 41 with a wife and 3 children and lives very happy in Apple Valley, California. He also volunteers in leadership roles within his local church and is the president of the board at Apple Valley Christian Academy. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mr. Brown.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So as you know, my first question to all of our guests is to please, take us back and share with us your journey to becoming the founder of what is now TNN IT Services Management.
It could be a long story. I'll try to cut it short. But in a nutshell, it was essentially what I loved to do, and it became a career. And so, like a lot of guys in high school, I played a lot of video games. And I found that my playing of video games turned into just enjoying understanding how the computer worked. When I was growing up, AOL was becoming popular. If you're familiar with that, I might be dating myself a little bit now, but
we're about the same age. I'm actually
okay.
2 years older than you.
Yeah, so you got mail,
Yes.
It was a thing. The internet became a thing when I was a kid, and I became fascinated with how all of that worked. And so, I did a brief stint in the career that my mom was in because she was very successful in real estate finance. But then that industry is cyclical and it crashed when I was about 20 years old. And I decided, well, if this is not going to work, then I best do what I love to do. So that's when I got on that road to get my Microsoft Engineer cert. And I found it just to come naturally for me. So 3 months, I got my engineer cert. I got my first job working in North Hollywood. I was commuting all the way from Pinion Hills to North Hollywood. Wow. So that was pretty rough, but I didn't stay there very long. And about 6 months after that, I got a job in Victorville, where I live. And I did that for about a year, and I got a mortgage company kind of all under control. Their systems, they had 3 locations, and I had their entire IT infrastructure managed to the point that I didn't need to be there all the time. So I started moonlighting, and that moonlighting just got me into the right group of people. All the business people in the high desert, found me and found that I was able to solve their problems, and the business just exploded from there. So and that was all 20 years ago now. But there's been a lot of stuff between here and there, but really the essence of it was, it was a hobby turned into a career. And I always tell people, do what you love, because if you do what you love, then, you don't have to work very hard at it.
That is so extremely true. I tell my children that all the time. focus on what you love, expand your horizons, learn something new. And when you find what it is that you love, pursue that. Everything else will come, right? You never work a day in your life, like you said. So let's get into a little bit more about TNN, right? Because I know one of the major services that you offer, and that's extremely hot topic right now, is we're looking at cybersecurity and some of the warnings that we've received from from the White House, basically warning of potential attacks and, basically preparing for those cyber attacks. Please talk about exactly what is data security and what are some techniques and tools that exist to ensure that data is secure today.
Sure. Cybersecurity, it's such a broad topic, and so many people have been talking about it and so many people are concerned about it, but narrowing it down is even a challenge to kind of zero in on what it really means for you and your particular business. And then there are tools to avoid data breach. And then there are policies and procedures to avoid the legal risk of data breach. And so cybersecurity is this big, people think that it's, a bunch of nerds in the back of in a basement, looking at screens and analyzing attacks that are happening on day by day. But a lot of it is really user training, and it is basic tools and policies and procedures need to be implemented by a company to reduce their risk. So I guess to start off in the subject would be to just say, well, what needs to be secured? Very few companies even understand what should be secured. We want to say everything, but at the root of it, there are a few real big hot button categories that we want to make sure don't have data breaches. And those would be, PII, which is a term that's used in the industry for personally identifiable information. So anything like a customer's name, address, their social security number, things of those things, anything that can be used, their birth date, their marital status. And on our dark web scans, we actually get a PII number hit whenever a customer comes up on a scan, and we can see what type of data actually got released out of there into the ether of them. Right. So identifying, cybersecurity is going to start with identifying at an organizational level, well, how much of this protected stuff do I store? And that's just PII. You also have credit card information, and then a big topic is healthcare information. So anyone in the healthcare field will be familiar with the Hipaa Compliance. Hipaa Compliance has been around for probably 2 decades now. That's been popular ever since the electronic medical records have moved on. And so any health information is a high topic to address from a security perspective. So I would say that those are the big things you need to secure.
Right.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, and so that also leads to data backup, right? So when you're looking at data backup, how and what should we do to ensure that it's properly backed up, and what data should be backed up?
Actually, if you don't mind me backing up a little bit to the last topic, before we get into data backup, I think maybe we should probably address a little bit about how data compromises happen, because the data will either be compromised or lost due to a few different ways that a would-be bad actor would get in, and those are typically through phishing. Are you familiar with phishing, the term?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Yeah, phishing. Everyone's becoming very familiar with phishing. So phishing, and then there's like hacker-enabled websites. So if you ever, Google used to not be as good about this, but if you're using an off-brand search engine, sometimes you'll search for something and then you'll follow the link and you won't get anything like what you're looking for. A lot of those websites will have code in them to try to compromise your computer. Verizon did a study this year, and 82% of compromises come from user error. So the vast majority of the idea that there's these guys in a bunker, locking things down. The real issue is 82% of those are really left to just mistakes that users are making.
Right. And what do those mistakes look like? We've seen them in the email, but I'm also noting a lot of them are also coming via text. I've seen text from Amazon, allegedly, text from my bank, allegedly, asking me to follow a link and enter my credentials to log in.
Of course.
Those are the latest phishing things. But what other items have you seen through your experiences?
Yeah, I mean, it's so far to as they call you too. Sometimes, I think my wife came to me a couple weeks ago and said, "I got Amazon on the phone. Amazon says that we had a return that hasn't been processed." And I was like, "We have no return. What are you talking about?" I got them on the phone and I said, "Tell me how you can validate that you're Amazon." And they hung up. So it's fascinating how bold people can get. But I would say that what we do is, and what any good cybersecurity company is going to do, is implement a very good training program. So the users need to be trained to know. And so we combine a ongoing training program along with a false phishing campaign. So we will actually circumvent the email security system of our customers' network because we manage it. And then we'll send phishing emails to all of their users. And you'd be shocked, but we always get hits. So then customers, their users will actually follow the links that we send in because we're actually acting as a phishing company, and they'll enter their information, and then we get a report, and we can then identify what users need to be trained.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you're basically finding the prime people that need to be educated as to why it is they shouldn't be clicking on the links you sent them, basically. So it's a safe test, it sounds like.
Yeah, it's a safe test because we find out who's doing it. It doesn't go anywhere. And we do add layers for email security and endpoint security and network layer security to try to avoid all of those things coming in. But no tool is 100%. And really, it comes down to if 80%, 82% of the breaches are occurring because of user error, then our best effort is being spent training the user, because that's where we can stop it. Because the internet's too vast to have any tool be 100%.
Right.
I mean,
No,
even the
of course.
LA Unified School District got compromised this weekend. And I'm sure they had tons of tools involved, but a user with access can accidentally let people in. There's just, it just comes down to users. So we have an ongoing training program that sends them like a 5-minute video and a test afterwards, and we track compliance with that for all the users.
And how frequently do you conduct those safe tests for your clients? Is it like a quarterly, annual, or just as needed or as requested?
So the training would, it's going to be based on the customer's desire, but typically there will be a training once every month. It's like a quick little 5-minute video, and then they follow answer a questionnaire on the video to make sure that they listen to it. Anything longer, and you'll lose the attention span of the typical user, and it becomes an impact to regular business function. And then the phishing stuff is more random. So the most customers we have on a 30-day cycle for all emails that we monitor, but it's random. So what the email that they get and who gets it and when they get it is randomized over the month. So that, if everyone got the same email on the same day, then people would know what was going on.
Right. So, okay, that makes sense. That's a great way to test, at least in a safe way. So then let's go into data management and data backup, right? Because this has been technology, especially in recent, working environment, that's been extremely useful and helpful in terms of workflow, sharing information, transfer of data and all of that. Let's talk about why it's important and how is it that you're able to ensure that data is, backed up, let's say, onto the cloud, and it stays there and it's accessible and it's safe.
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought up the cloud because cloud platforms are probably one of the most misunderstood as far as data backup goes. Back in the days before we had the cloud or before cloud platforms were popular, we used to say that, and this still applies to anyone that's not dealing with the cloud platform, that your data is, limited to 3 kind of vulnerabilities. Either you have a component failure, like something physically breaks, your server breaks, your computer breaks, if you don't have a server or whatnot, and that data could be potentially lost because of a physical component failure. The second risk is accidental deletion. So you're in there, someone accidentally deletes something, they've been working on some big project, and it happens. A folder gets deleted, a year's worth of data gets lost. You have that type. And then you also have what's called, corruption. And corruption, and this is where we get into like the more modern cloud platform risk that we have. A lot of your listeners may have had experience with something called Cryptolocker. There's a bunch of different terms and different variants of this, but it all gets kind of branded under Cryptolocker. And it was an ingenious idea that some hacker had that they said, well, if I can compromise a customer's computer, then I can jump on the network and I can encrypt everything on the network so it can't be read. And then I can hold them hostage. And so that's where you get people paying ransoms and Bitcoin and whatnot
bad actors
to get their data. Yeah, to get their data. Yeah, I mean, and true story, I managed a local hospital here for like 9 years, and then they got bought out through a bankruptcy. And a few months after we were no longer doing their IT, we got a call from them asking if we had access to their backups. And we said no, and we said, but why? And they said, well, we got Cryptolocker. And they ended up, it was just a mistake that they hadn't changed the password on their backup system.
Oh no.
Since they removed our contract. And but they ended up having to pay a ransom to get their data back. But to get back to the cloud platform and how this ties in with the more modern stuff that we encounter is that these Cryptolocker type programs, the cloud is not immune to them. I haven't seen a prolific virus infection or a hacker that would encrypt data on the cloud, but it's totally feasible, and that's something we're trying to protect our customers against. Because I feel like that's the next horizon, that it won't be long before we see Cryptolocker variants that start crawling the data on the cloud, because it works the same way that the servers worked 5 or 6 years ago when it was very prevalent. So I expect that to be coming around the corner.
So then with that said, how many varieties or versions of backup would you recommend to your client? So, maybe like a hard backup in terms of an external storage component, as well as the cloud, as well as whatever's on their servers. What is it that you recommend to your clients?
So I recommend the client have obviously their live data, and their live data, if they're personally housing their live data, and we're talking about a cloud provider, then I'd want it to be on a server that has some form of redundant hardware. So that's like your first layer of security. So that if a device were to fail, you still have that data readily available on the server, and it doesn't get lost in the event of a hard drive failure. The second would be just external backup, like you're talking about. So external backup drive with some software that takes an image of the server or the PC or whatnot on a hourly basis. On our systems, we take them on an hourly basis, and we retain data going up to a year. It's not every hour for a whole year. We end up collapsing that data so that we have restore points. But in essence, that's the plan. And then there's an offsite component. We say that it's best, even if you have it redundant at your office, you have it redundant on an external drive. A true story again, I got a call, I don't know, it was probably 7 or 8 years ago on Easter Sunday. I was with family, and I got a call from a customer that it was a dental office, and someone threw a firebomb through their window.
Oh my goodness.
And firebombed their whole practice. And so server, external drive, all that stuff was completely lost. And fortunately, we had backups at our data center. So we were able to spin that up, and they were able to work on rescheduling their customers. And there was all sorts of insurance. And I don't know exactly, the long-term, how they work through the business challenges, but I do know from a technical perspective, we were able to get them access to their data right away. And that's because it needs to be offsite in addition. But the part that people don't know is that in cloud environments like Office 365 or G Suite or Google, they don't take responsibility for the backup of your data. And that's commonly misunderstood. They make sure your data is available, but if it were to be compromised or it were to be lost or whatnot, there's no backup on their side. So they have what's called a shared responsibility model. Their responsibility is to make it available, but your responsibility is to back it up. And a lot of people think that they move to the cloud, they move to OneDrive or SharePoint or Google Drive or Dropbox or any of these platforms. They don't provide the backup side of the service, and we're just one prolific hacker solution away from seeing that stuff getting locked up, like we saw a couple of years ago with Cryptolocker.
Right. Oh my goodness. So with that said, this is, an area that maybe a lot of people that are in business, that are managing data, are not aware of. But let's talk a little bit about the liability exposure that exists as a result of a breach, especially, you're talking about HIPAA, other personal information or details, or even projects and contracts and things of that nature. Please talk a little bit about what you've seen in that arena.
Sure. Well, every company is going to be a little different. Every company is going to have a different level of PII, or in the health industry, they call it PHI, credit cards. If they take website payments or any type of e-commerce, they might have some risk. But I would say that it's important when you're talking about legal liability, that more important than the tools that you're using, because the tools are important. The tools will keep the environment safe. The user training will keep the environment safe. The false phishing, the email security, all the scanning that we do. That's all fine and good. But like I said before, nothing's 100%. And so if a breach happens, the company is going to have liability if it didn't go through the process of creating a cybersecurity plan. And we see this a lot with cybersecurity liability insurance requirements. So a cybersecurity insurance company will come out and say, well, what's your plan? Because they want to know that if there's a breach, did the customer go through that process? And did they document the process? Did they identify how they should handle things? And that's a long and arduous, program to go through. But it is what you're going to need to do if you want to avoid the legal liability of a data breach. The tools to avoid the actual data breach are actually very simple. That's the easy part of deploying a solution. But all the planning is the more complicated part of that process.
And so, with that said, who would you say are at greater risks of liability or attacks? Have you seen a trend? Have you seen certain businesses, become more targets than others? What have you seen in your time as the founder of TNN?
I would say that it's not super common in the small business arena. I'll be honest. The bigger concern is in the government entities. So, and we do have quite a bit of government entities that we deal with: community service districts, water districts, entities like that. They're still under the government umbrella. And healthcare providers are the biggest one. Healthcare providers, and they know this. They've heard this for decades now. And then the third layer is anyone with an online presence, and especially people who conduct e-commerce. So if you're selling something on a website, you're actually taking payments over the internet. That's going to be something that has to be looked at very carefully to make sure that data doesn't get compromised, and no one gets in the middle and is able to see that data as it comes across and to use it in some way.
Wow. So I'm curious, are there AI aspects to some of this technology to assist in protecting data?
I haven't encountered any AI tools. I wouldn't be surprised if some come out soon. I see AI used in a lot of other aspects. When I get out of cybersecurity, if I talk about business processes, I run into AI a lot more often. But in the actual cybersecurity arena, no, I don't see AI. There may be some AI behind how our campaigns are built by our tool provider, but none that I see at the small medium business level right now.
Okay, well, that'll be interesting, right? So basically having a computer defend your computer, right? It's like fighting fire with fire.
Sure. Except when, Susie opens an email and lets somebody into there, let somebody in, it's kind of hard to identify that. It's really hard to identify the difference between, so any AI tool that's going to exist is going to have to exist at a layer above the customer's network. Because any tool is going to have to see patterns of traffic and identify those patterns of traffic amongst multiple companies. I wouldn't be surprised if we see that happening at the ISP level at some point, or maybe it's happening now. Who knows? We see that there's probably a lot of that at the denial of service level that we see, but but I'm going to get into the weeds on the technical stuff here, so I don't want to nerd out and lose everybody in the audience. But we do see that stuff in the denial of service layer, which is when companies, bad actors want to shut websites down or shut portions of the internet down. They overwhelm the ISP's ability to provide data. They just like overwhelm it with requests, thousands and thousands of requests a second, millions of requests a second to shut it down. So I'm sure we see AI at that level, but again, I'm getting into the weeds there.
Okay, well, thank you for that. All right, everybody, for those listening, I'm Yvette Walker on Southern California Business Report on ABC News and Talks, KMET 1490 AM, 98.1 FM, and KMET TV, talking to Mr. Justin Brown, founder of TNN Managed Services, talking about the diverse and growing field of IT services, challenges and approaches to protecting clients from exposure to cyber attacks, encouraging local talent, and talking about career pathways that are growing and are in tremendous demand when we return. City of Hope is driven to making a difference in the lives of people with cancer and diabetes. We accomplish this by conducting innovative research and providing outstanding care. If you or a loved one has received a cancer diagnosis, go to cityofhope.org to learn more about how our innovative approach could change your outcome.
Ontario International Airport is onto a better way to fly with over 65 daily nonstop flights to more than 20 major destinations and the easiest airport experience in Southern California. Visit flyonto.com/Ontario to learn more about Ontario International Airport today.
Every 2 seconds, someone needs a blood transfusion. Be on the giving side. Livestream Blood Bank supports patients in 80 Southern California hospitals. Call 1-800-TRY-GIVING for more information and to set an appointment.
Hi, I'm San Bernardino County Sheriff Shannon Dykes. If you're looking to start an exciting career in law enforcement and make a difference in your community, we are hiring dispatchers, nurses, deputies, laterals, and many more. For a complete list of our jobs and more information, visit sheriffsjobs.com.
It's summer, the sun is shining, and now's the time to make the most of your solar panels. Don't lose up to 50% of your solar panels' efficiency just because they're dirty. Get the most out of your solar panels and call my friends at Solar Panel Cleaning Specialists at 951-663-7502. That's 951-663-7502. Mention this ad and receive your discount. Offer expires December 31st.
The University of La Verne is rated first in California for alumni satisfaction. Learn more about accelerated programs offered online and on campus in La Verne, Irvine, Ontario, Burbank, or College of the Canyons. Visit go.laverne.edu. The University of La Verne. go.laverne.edu.
Cal State San Bernardino is home to the only School of Entrepreneurship in California. With globally ranked degree programs, you can start your journey today to become a successful entrepreneur. Learn more and connect at entre.csusb.edu.
Welcome back. For those listening, I'm Yvette Walker on Southern California Business Report on ABC News and Talks, KMET 1490 AM, 98.1 FM, and KMET TV, talking to Mr. Justin Brown, founder of TNN Managed Services, talking about the diverse and growing field of IT services, challenges and approaches to protecting clients from exposure to cyber attacks, encouraging local talent, and talking about career pathways that are growing and are in tremendous demand. Thank you again for being with us today, Mr. Brown.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, so before the break, we spoke about data management, how to avoid data breaches, and data backup, resources and opportunities. So with that said, let's go into the next topic. I know, a lot of the data breaches that we were talking about boiled down to user error, as you identified, and you spoke at length about some of the educational training opportunities that you offer your clients.
Sure, yeah. Where we do the ongoing user training, we do the false phishing campaigns, and then we add layers of security to a customer's network, add a layer of security onto their endpoints, and those types of things. Yeah, we definitely that would be the standard package in a kind of cybersecurity company would want to roll out to protect an environment, to make sure the users know what's going on, and we're taking as much meaningful precautions as we can to secure a customer's network from accidentally going to any kind of bad acting website or phishing link or something to that effect.
Right. And again, just briefly, just talk over, just 3 quick points on the best practice in order to ensure that data is indeed secure for your clients.
Well, if we're talking about the actual breaches, I would say that some of the best things are multi-factor authentication. So multi-factor authentication, if you've ever had an application that texts you a number or emails you a number, or they use an authenticator app on their phone, any tool that does that type of thing will stop someone from being able to get into a piece of software. So if you have that ability within any of your applications to secure any of the data you need to protect any of that personal identifiable information, if multi-factor authentication can be implemented, then it is a very good thing to do. The second thing I would say that the average person can do without hiring a company would be to have a password keeper, something like LastPass or Passly. I personally use LastPass, but those tools then make sure that every password you have on every website is unique. So whenever you sign up for a website and you're registering, you just generate a secure password, and then that password keeper keeps track of it for you. So password keeper, along with multi-factor authentication, is going to do a really good job of keeping all of the information that a would-be hacker would use to log into things like bank accounts or websites or whatnot. We'll keep that all very secure. I think that any average user can see those 2 tools and use them effectively to secure their data.
Okay, that's a great resource. Thank you so much for sharing that. So with all of the opportunities that exist to properly and safely back up data, and especially if we're talking about the cloud, let's move into some of the more remote workforce management scenarios that you're managing today. Please talk a little bit about how that looks. I'm sure this has been keeping you extremely busy the past couple of years, given the pandemic and things of that nature. Please share a little bit about your experience in that field.
Yeah, COVID hit and everyone got on the work from home bandwagon. It happened fast, happened very quick. We had remote work people all the time before that, but it wasn't as prolific as it's become. And I'll say that the biggest challenge that, companies have a few challenges. One of theirs is how am I going to track my employees? How am I going to know that they're actually getting their work done when they're not here? And every business is going to be a little different. So I can speak to my business per se. If I have a remote worker, then I can track. We do IT. So in our IT world, we have calls coming in for customer support. We have tickets to get created. I can track time on the phone. I can track calls answered. I can track tickets closed, billable time against tickets. Every industry should have a number of what we call KPIs or key performance indexes that you would say, this employee is doing a good job if they hit these particular reference points. And so it's important that as we look at software and how we roll out software and how customers use software, that not only the software, but phone systems and whatnot all tie into the ability for a customer to be tracked or an employee to be tracked in a way that management then feels confident that, because some employees and some jobs I think are actually more effective from remote. It's actually harder for people to focus in the office. So I think this can be beneficial as long as everyone's comfortable with the deliverables they're getting. Right. I'd say the second thing that customers or that employees, I say customers because they're my customers, but that companies want to do is when an employee's at home, they need to make sure that the employee appears to be at the office. So we run into this a lot with the phone system side when we do phone systems. So if a customer has or an employee has a home office, we want to make sure that they have a phone system that will allow them to call like they're from the main office. So it's kind of, unless someone's in sales, it's kind of weird to get a call from a random cell phone. Nowadays everyone's got caller ID and they see the phone numbers that are coming in. So enabling a customer to make a dial either from a mobile device or from a desk phone or whatnot, and have it appear like they're part of the office. And that would be for outbound, but even for inbound, then how do we make sure we have a phone system that, like, if a business has inbound customer service calls, how do we get those calls to a particular employee that's working from their house? And so, with the modern phone system, these aren't challenges per se, but they are things that if you don't have them, make it really hard to track how an employee is functioning in a remote work environment. And then the third, I would say, is access. Does the employee have the proper access, and is that access easy to use, so that they can not only work on the work they need to work on, but also collaborate with other people within the office effectively.
Right. And so when you're talking about the telephone systems, are you working like with VoIP systems, voice over internet protocol? What systems do you encourage your clients to pursue in order to not only present, a professional environment when interfacing with clients, but also as a way of, maybe measuring some of those metrics to ensure productivity?
Sure. Yeah, we definitely use VoIP or VoIP. We built our VoIP platform, I think, like 8 or 9 years ago, and so we have a large number of our customers on that platform. We personally use it also, obviously. And so even if it's not ours, any VoIP platform makes it a lot easier to have the appearance of being in the office, and also it allows you to merge multiple offices together so they have the appearance of one. And then hopefully your VoIP platform will give you the things you need. Like, some customers want call recording so they can do kind of customer service quality checkups on staff to listen into those recordings. They want time on the phone, calls answered, those types of things. And a good VoIP system will be able to give a customer all those things so they can effectively manage a mobile workforce. I would imagine we'd be really surprised at the amount of customer service calls that we call in and we're getting someone at their house. I would be shocked to find it was probably more than 75% of the calls I make when I call random businesses or talking to people that aren't in the building anymore.
Yeah, that's true. And so are there special or different considerations that businesses with the remote workforce have to consider when protecting their data?
I would say that the challenge, the user training has to be way more important, because you can't lock down every environment at every house. Once you start expanding your risk to all of your employees' homes, you really don't have a layer of security at those homes. So there are a few ways to accomplish if you are in a high risk environment where you cannot have that risk. There are solutions like what I call the first generation of cloud, which is what we call terminal services, is where you run an application and you get a screen on a different computer, essentially. So that would be what I call like cloud version 1. We all got attributed to cloud way back in the days. And that still exists. If you need a full lockdown and your industry requires that, then using like a terminal service type solution where we have a host of workstations and servers that are somewhere else, and then your employees will then remote into there, and they will be presented with another desktop, essentially their work computer at their home. That's the easiest environment to fully secure. With that said, that's not for every customer. Some customers, their risk is lower. The amount of protected information is lower. They may just give access to the line of business software, and they may just want to have endpoint security on their desktop that we manage. That's all fine too. Each customer is a little different. And what's important is that when they pick a vendor to help them with cybersecurity, that vendor dialogues with them and gains a good understanding of what their business risks are and can work through that to make sure that they've taken as reasonable steps as possible to secure that data.
Right. And so with that said, can you please talk about additional, let's talk about, let's say, the top 3 considerations for employers when establishing a remote workforce as it applies, to data and workflow and matrix systems in terms of measuring performance.
Yeah, and I've already brushed on these also through all this other talking that we've done, but I'd say that the top 3 would be, can the employee efficiently access the data that they need? Like, is it overly cumbersome to work from home? Because you may not get a hand raised by an employee when it's a little more cumbersome. You want to make sure that the work from home is somewhat seamless and just as effective as being at the office. And that can be done. There has to be some thought put into it. The second part is, I would say, make sure that employee is still able to collaborate with other employees, because once they start working from home, there's a potential for a larger disconnect. So we use a platform called Teams. That's part of Microsoft's offering, and that works really good to do collaboration between employees. But then the employees need to be trained on it. They need to know how to use it, and they need to effectively use it. So you can replace that collaboration with software, but it's not the exact same thing, and there has to be some thought put into how am I going to enable my employees to all work together from a distance. And then the third thing, and this just kind of goes to any business coaching that anyone might encounter, is deliverables. What am I going to measure? What am I expecting an employee to do from home? And how am I going to track that it's being done? Because if we just, cross our fingers and send them home, there may be a lot of frustration on both sides. The employee doesn't know exactly how they're supposed to get things done, and then management may be frustrated that they're not getting what they expected to from that employee. So being really clear about what those key performance indicators are and how we're going to track that and how we're going to talk about it is real important.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. So it's just basically open communication and collaboration and all of the things that we need to do anyway to make a business successful.
Yeah, it's not rocket science, I know, but nevertheless, it has to be stated, because if we're talking about this, that's the important stuff right there. Yeah, and software is not that hard, actually, and maybe I'm saying that because I'm an IT guy, so the software seems easy to me. But right. I really do feel like the software side of it is not the hard part. It's managing people that's the hard part.
Right. But the solutions that you offer allow those people to come together in a more efficient and cohesive way to hopefully, eliminate some of the barriers that would cause, issues, challenges, miscommunications, or frustrations about workflow or expectations.
Yeah. But I'm just a tool, right? At the end of the day, it is the customer who's going to have these communication paths and this dialogue with their employees in the process. I can bring the tools to the table. That's not the problem. That's typically not the problem. The challenge is in making sure the company has developed a process. And I say that for the benefit of your listeners, not really to plug my company. But we can definitely help with the tools that you'll need, as long as you do the work of figuring out how do I expect to measure these things. Then you come to us and say, well, I want to measure them. What can I do? So I have customers, like, for example, I have a customer that we developed a process to give them on a monthly basis. They have 3 particular people they want to track: the amount of time on the phone, the amount of time per call, how many calls they get, and so on and so forth. And they're not a call center environment, so that's typically not something we do. But we developed a customer report for them, and they use that to track those employees. I think they're in media or something like that. I'm not exactly sure what their role is. I just know the customers asked us for those things, and so we developed a tool that will help enable them for that.
So you can create a custom program based on what your customers need, regardless of the field of business that they're in, basically.
Yeah, and that's what's interesting is in the IT space, you will have a lot of companies think that you need to be vertically integrated, that you need to focus on one industry. But right. There is this big horizontal section in the IT space of companies, under 60 employees. And I use that marker because at around 60 employees, a company will typically hire a full-time IT guy. that's typically what we encounter. Somewhere between 50 and 75 employees. They'll hire a full-time IT guy, and then that'll be, kind of his job to run everything that's there. But when they're under that 60 user count is the one that we always follow. Most of those companies have very similar needs. They may be in varying industries, and we support, car dealerships, law firms, veterinary offices, dentists, doctors' offices, CPAs. We support all sorts of different industries. But we find is that in the small to medium business space, that under 60 employee count, most of the needs are very similar. They may have different software, they may have different labels, but that's our job to help work through what they have at their disposal and how we can, build, utilize their tools and the tools that we can bring to the table to help them run their business more effectively.
Oh, it makes sense. So what are you seeing in terms of remote workforce employees being invited back to the office?
I see a lot on the news. So I see Elon Musk saying, everybody needs to come back to the office, and I see all sorts of stuff like that. I don't see the same, en masse force happening at the SMB level. So that hasn't been my experience. I think that a lot of people went to work, especially when it was required, when they couldn't be in the office. I think that a lot has settled down, though. I think the remote workforce on the SMB level, it seems to be that it's being provided kind of as an incentive to get to employees that they're having a hard time either getting or retaining, because working from home is kind of a privilege. And right now, the hiring market is definitely employee centric right now. It's definitely an employees market, to use real estate terms. Right. It's an employees market right now. And, like 8 years ago, it was an employer's market.
Right.
So I think that in trying to accommodate a workforce that's harder and harder to keep and retain, I think employers are looking at offering remote workforce actually more than trying to bring them back in the office. That's what I've seen. Now, it may be that, the economy tanks and we switch back to an employer-centric model, and we may see small medium businesses demand everyone come back in the office. But I haven't seen that, I haven't seen that represented in our customers as much as I've seen it in the news with, Elon Musk and whatnot.
Right, right. And it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out because, I'm sure businesses are saving on, space in the office, but then what are insurance companies going to start doing when they start realizing, okay, there are additional risks, there are additional liabilities with these employees that are off-site, permanently, and how does that expose the company? So then, a lot of these costs, I believe, in the long run are going to fluctuate and going to stabilize and kind of be the same as they would be if they were to come back into the office.
Yeah, who knows? And I haven't seen anybody actually reduce in the SMB space, be able to reduce their office space yet. I'm sure it's going to happen, but I haven't seen anyone downsize to the point where they shrink their office. But yeah, and then at that point, if you want to bring them back in the office, you don't have the space anymore. So, who knows what's going to happen in the future if that shift goes back the other way. But yeah, I definitely see that as kind of like that is changing the face of how we do business in general, not just IT.
Absolutely. It's absolute paradigm shift. And so with that said, I can only imagine the tremendous pressure that was on you for the last couple of years to be able to serve all of these SMB, which is small to medium businesses, right? Medium-sized businesses, and their needs to be able to support, a remote workforce. So please talk about your hiring practices at TNN. How is it that how is it that you hire people?
Yeah, I feel like that's one of our differentiators, and it's hard to package that into a marketing piece. So I never have, but if I ever get a chance to talk about it, I do, because I found early on that there was very little correlation between a good resume or a good interview, or even like the position or the compensation level. I found, at least in the IT space, I found very little correlation to those things to job performance. And after a lot a lot of trial and error, I started identifying that, there are some people that were successful and some people that weren't when they came to work for me. And I started implementing things like intelligence testing, personality profiling into the hiring process so that I can track people. But I have to back it up. So what I will do is, if someone goes to apply for work with us, they'll get a test link that gets sent to them before their resume is even reviewed. So, and they can follow that link, and they can it's a quick personality profile and a quick intelligence test. It's done by a company called Wonderlic. So I know football fans all know about the Wonderlic. It's been around since the 70s. I'm not a football fan, but I found it as an employment pre-screener. And so I'm looking for the guy who can rise to the top. I'm not really as interested at where he's at right now in his career. I'm interested in where he can go. And so those tools help me see who can get there. So I prefer to find people with no experience. I like to find the dungeon nerds that, we use that term around the office all the time. I want to find the dungeon nerd that loves computers like I was and just, did it all day long and wanted to do it as a career and has a lot of aptitude. Because with that person, I can back it up with training and I can back it up with process and give them a career path. And those are the most successful hires. I think every business can look at who's been successful and figure out, how do I find that person? Not just someone with experience or a good resume, but look for that person that I can train to be the next, great person on my team.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing all of your information, talking about TNN and ways that, customers can really start looking about ways to protect their data, back up their data, and support their remote workforce. Thank you so much, Mr. Brown.
Thank you for having me.
All right. For everybody listening, don't forget to look for us on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Check us out on scbrtalk.com. And don't forget to download the free live streaming app on Google Play or the Apple App Store. Don't miss my interview with Jeff Burham, chairman of National Community Renaissance. In 1991, using his own resources, Mr. Burham co-founded National Community Renaissance in response to the need for affordable housing in San Bernardino County. 5 years later, wanting to provide more than shelter to low-income families and seniors, he co-founded the Hope Through Housing Foundation to offer programs and services that transform the lives of residents. Today, National Core is one of the largest national nonprofit affordable housing developers in the country. Burham is a long-time affordable housing advocate. Early in his career, he was one of 2 real estate professionals to be appointed by Congress to serve on the Millennial Commission. Next week, we will have Aquanetta Warren, elected as mayor in December of 2010 and overwhelmingly reelected in 2014 and 2018. Aquanetta Warren is serving her 3rd term as the mayor of the city of Fontana. Mayor Warren focuses her administrations on bolstering economic development, creating educational opportunities, and advocating for a healthier community. As a nationally recognized leader, Mayor Warren serves as chairwoman of the Workforce, Career, and Technical Education Task Force, is vice chairwoman of the Youth Issues Committee with the U.S. Conference of Mayors. She's the member of the Intergovernmental Policy Advisory Committee to focus on trade issues, also a member of the Southern California Association of Governments, Economic and Human Development Committee. She's a member of the Board of Directors for the General Policy Committee and Transit Committee of the San Bernardino County Transportation Authority as well. Mayor Warren earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in Political Science, Urban Studies from Occidental College, and has an honorary doctorate degree in Theology from Next Dimension Bible College, and is a member of the Water of Life Community Church. She has 3 children and 3 beautiful grandchildren. Don't miss it, everybody. We will see you next week.